I mentioned in my previous article, when I looked at an article by Dr. Lorraine Day, I always like to go back and recap different things I study. And when I watched the movie The Secret, the only thing that I could recap here in this section is what we don't want. The only thing they repeated over and over and over and over. Don't focus on what we don't want. In fact, the man who turned me on to raw food and also that personality test called Personalysis, he was real into the metaphysics and turned me on to the Science of Mind publication. And he was actually into Ramtha, which kind of is a joke. But anyway, interesting man nonetheless. And one of the things he told me, he says, the universe, when you don't want something, the universe doesn't hear the don't. So if you don't want a divorce, don't say I don't want a divorce, I don't want a divorce, because then you'll get the divorce. That was from a metaphysical point of view. But when we look at this thing here, I wanted to point out what he says about the war on drugs and the war on, let me see, where would that be at? All right, it should be a very small section. Here it is right here. You know, the anti-war movement creates more war. The anti-drug movement has actually created more drugs because we're focusing on what we don't want. Drugs. Okay, way to go, Jack. Again, this, and I added to this file a couple of quotes. One is from my file on revolution. You've heard me speak of this quote many times by Joseph Campbell. Revolution doesn't have to do with smashing something. It has to do with bringing something forth. If you spend all your time thinking about that which you are attacking, then you are negatively bound to it. You have to find the zeal in yourself and bring that out. But we don't want to ignore the dark side of our behavior and not do downstream damage control. Here's another good quote by Andrew Carnegie. Any idea that is held in the mind that is either feared or revered will begin at once to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate physical forms available. Indeed, words are real, so we got to pick the words we use wisely. Now, coming back to my file on marijuana, I don't want to make this any longer than it already is. What I'd like to do is go ahead and go to where is it? Let me see. See, right here what we have are articles. This is my file. This is my actual file preview. So when you look through my file preview, you'll see a lot of articles without any breakdown on it. A lot of times I've read them, but I just haven't gone back and filled in the gaps. The science behind this. Oh, this is really interesting. This is this article really explains things in a way that makes a lot of sense. This is written back in September of 2015. The science behind cannabinoids is clear. Marijuana helps the brain achieve breakthroughs in learning, consciousness, and understanding. I want to go through quite a bit of this article. I put things in bold and underlined ones that really stood out, and I want to make sure I read those, but I'm going to probably read the vast majority of this article. A great misunderstanding regarding the therapeutic value of the cannabis plant persists, even within some reform circles. Marijuana is often lumped into the same category as cigarettes, hard drugs, and even alcohol, with the latest trend being to designate cannabis as less harmful than these other substances. In reality, cannabis isn't actually harmful at all, and it can help improve the way people think, process, and understand information, and even function physically. Now, I know a lot of you people are thinking, what in the world is this guy talking about? Well, there are several things I wanted to say before I got into this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that so I can come back to it. Let's go to the end of my file. There's several things I wanted to show you before I really got into this. It's interesting when you look at marijuana. Marijuana is not marijuana. There's different types of strains. If you go to leafy.com, this is medicinal marijuana, and what you'll find here right off the bat, they go through. Let me get through this. Bear with me, folks. Here it is right here. Categories. There's hybrid, indica, sativa, and edible. Then we got flavors. Check this out. These are the different flavors of medicinal edible marijuana. Mango, peach, pear, strawberry, tea, tropical, vanilla, woody. 47 different flavors. Now let's take a look at the effects. We've got 14 effects. One is anxious. Well, as I mentioned before, since marijuana is illegal, many times the first time people do something, they feel anxious. They go, I never want to do this again. But let's take a look at some of the other things. the other effects marijuana has. Aroused, creative, hey, I think I like that idea. Energetic, yeah, I want more energy. Euphoric, oh, I don't know about that, maybe. Focused, yeah, I like to be focused. Giggly, I like to be happy too. Hungry, no, I don't want to be hungry. Relaxed, oh, wait a second, isn't that the different plants will do different things to you. Make it sleepy, talkative, tingly, uplifted. So you say, well, I'll take something that will get me uplifted. I want to be creative. You can choose different types of marijuana that will do different things. Symptoms. Look at these. Look what there's 14 different symptoms we know marijuana is good for: cramps, depression, eye pressure, fatigue, headaches, inflammation, insomnia, lack of appetite, muscle spasms, nausea, pain, seizures, spasticity, stress, conditions. Look at this. We've got 26 conditions right there. But remember, when we look at cancer, there's a lot of different cancers. So the reason why I brought this back up is to realize that there are 14 different main effects. And the main reason why most people get anxious when they do it initially is because it is illegal. And that can make someone anxious. But it's also a symptom regardless. Or it's one of the effects even if it was legal. So some people will feel that way. So it's interesting that different people respond differently to the different plants. And of course, different plants do different things. Let's go back to where I was. And that would be down here at the bottom of that article. But before I do that, actually, I'm going to go back up because there is something that seems like I'm missing that I wanted to point out, but I'm just going to take a quick glance. No, I guess not. It'll be down further. So let's go ahead and go back to where I was. Okay, once again, the very last sentence. In reality, cannabis isn't actually harmful at all, and it can help improve the way people think, process, and understand information, and even function physically. What you're going to see in this article is they sort of explain the actions is sort of like defragmenting your computer. You know, when you defragment your computer, your hard drive, you take all the stuff you're not using, you put it at the end of the file. So you put all the good stuff up front. So that's kind of what marijuana does. Remember the way denial works. When we're in denial about things we do that are wrong, we bury that. That's those unwanted aspects of ourselves that Carl Jung called our shadow. We have a very selective memory, so this is how cannabis can actually help people. Because we bury that under the subconscious. But when we smoke marijuana and we defragment our own brain, we put all the stuff that's unimportant that we've been using as distractions back to the end of the file or the hard drive, and we bring back up what was important to us, some of the things we're doing that need to be corrected, that we're in denial about. So, I've gotten interesting testimonies of people who used to smoke this a long time ago, and they got away from it, and then they started messing around with their wife and started going out partying and doing drugs like ecstasy and fooling around on their wife because they weren't happy married. And then they'd smoke a joint, and then they'd come to their senses and go, oh my God, what am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this ecstasy. I shouldn't be cheating on my wife. And what it did is, again, it helps change the brain. So let's read on, and this article will explain that. If you think of your brain as a computer hard drive that is constantly being imprinted with new information in the form of magnetized particles, cannabis and its associated cannabinoid constituents are the organizing and formatting tools that the drive uses to erase bad data, rearrange and reconfigure important data, and maintain and optimize the drive. In other words, cannabis is what helps keep certain parts of the brain tidy and well performing. This is a somewhat oversimplified analogy. I'm going to go back to cannabis is much like a counselor for the brain. As the grease of the brain, cannabis doesn't alter dopamine production like alcohol, cigarettes, and hard drugs do. Now, this is important to understand. We've been led to believe that marijuana is this evil, evil plant. It's a drug. It's not a drug. It's an herb. It's a healing herb, and it doesn't affect the dopamine production, the dopamine receptor site. So let's read on here. He goes into detail here. Crucial to a proper understanding of how cannabis affects the human brain is recognizing the fact that the brain was made for cannabis. Cannabinoids help bridge the gap between brain neurons, which are known as synapses, acting in ways that help positively regulate brain chemistry. When used appropriately, cannabis can help individuals break bad habits or learn new things. One source refers to cannabinoids as the grease that keeps the brain in tip-top shape, enabling mental growth and positive change. I already told you that we distract ourselves and we hide the good stuff in the past. Well, this will bring it up and help us change bad habits. This is worth repeating. Cannabinoids help bridge the gap between brain neurons, which are known as synapses, acting in ways that help positively regulate brain chemistry. Remember, Marijuana is the only thing that promotes neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells. Let's go down here. Unlike alcohol, tobacco, and amphetamines, cocaine, and heroin, cannabis doesn't interfere with the body's natural production of dopamine, a fundamental characteristic of drugs that induce physical dependence and have the potential to be abused. Cannabis exhibits no reinforcing properties, and the brain does not appear to have any cannabinoid receptors in the dopamine producing neurons. So they say cannabis is a gateway drug. No, alcohol is the gateway drug. Cannabis is just the opposite. Marijuana is distinguished from most other illicit drugs by the locations of its brain's receptor sites for two predominant reasons. One, listen up, guys, this is good stuff. The lack of receptors in the medulla significantly reduces the possibility of accidental or even deliberate death from THC. I remember seeing a PBS special, or someone else told me about it actually, where they said, well, how much of this does it take to kill somebody or kill a cell or whatever? And they found THC was the only thing that they couldn't use it to kill anything. And two, the lack of receptors in the mesocortical limbic pathway significantly reduces the risk of addiction and serious physical dependence. As a therapeutic drug, these features are God's greatest gifts. So marijuana is not an evil weed, it's one of God's greatest gifts. In fact, that deserves to be highlighted a little bit bigger. Now that I think about it more. Is cannabis the gateway to renewed understanding and positive mental breakthroughs? If cannabis works outside the brain reward system, how exactly does it work? Israeli researcher Raphael whoever, the man who first isolated the structure of tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, found that cannabinoids bind to receptor sites throughout the brain that are responsible for regulating how the brain processes events and information, translating this into movements, moods, and emotions. Let me digress for a moment. I'm not sure if I'm going to read this or not. I haven't read this article in a year or so. But I remember they explained it like this. If you go to a big sporting event like in a big city, what you're going to find is in one afternoon, you're going to have probably actually seen and memorized and got like 30,000 faces imprinted in your brain. Well, you want to put that to the back of the hard drive. We want to refragment or defragment our brain. So let's go on. Okay. Cannabis is used by man not for its actions on memory of movement or movement coordination, but for its actions on memory and emotions. Again, I'm going to go down to the ones that are highlighted and bolded. In other words, the nutrient chemicals present in cannabis act as modulators to keep a person stable and aware. And they might even help people overcome bad habits or unhealthy negative perceptions, which is why many people find relief from chronic depression and other mood disorders from using cannabis. Although there is much to learn about cannabis and cannabis-derived cannabinoids, including how they act in conjunction with the body's own endocannabinoid system, a system of the body that produces endogenous cannabinoids, to promote nervous system health, the available science makes it clear that cannabis is far from harmful. In fact, it might just be the key to healing mentally, physically, and spiritually for many people. No wonder the people who rule the world want this to be illegal. So, what else can I say about this amazing plant? Am I promoting people to go out and smoke pot? Of course not. However, there are many conditions that you can use this powerful plant if you learn to take it the right way. The last way we want to use this powerful plant is by smoking it. And if that's the only way you're going to use it, get something like a vaporizer or whatever those things are called. In fact, let me see if I can do a quick search in here. Vapor, V-A-P, B, vapor, is that how we spell it? Did I type in the wrong letter? Here we go. Right here. There it is right here. All right. Although medical marijuana is non-toxic, smoking it can be hazardous over the long term because toxic compounds are created in the combustion process. Fortunately, there are options for the administration of cannabis, but in general, all different ways of administering hemp oil or raw marijuana can be combined with no harmful side effects. Also, there are vaporizers that allow for inhalation, or what amounts to transdermal treatments into the lungs without burning the marijuana. It's a cool, clean smoke of powerful medicine. So folks, don't listen to our so-called experts. We're being duped. We're being conned. This is a gift of God. It's not an evil weed. If you have certain conditions, if you have cancer, if you have epilepsy, if you have radiation, we can use one of the most powerful plants on this planet to heal us. And of course, this is when we apply the art. We got to apply the science. We got to go upstream and correct our main dietary mistakes, and that's where the first of my 3-step process comes into play. So go down below and go to a seminar I uploaded and do the first of my 3-step process. And when you do, you're in for a treat.